by the Chinese government came up at the White House today. Reporters asked spokesman Jay Carney about a study that blames China's military for a large-scale, years-long hacking campaign.
We have repeatedly raised our concerns at the highest levels about cyber theft with senior Chinese officials, including in the military, and we will continue to do so.
The report alleges this nondescript 12-story office building is the locus of the hacking. It's situated in Shanghai and is run by Unit 61398, a bureau within the General Staff of the People's Liberation Army. A Virginia-based security firm, Mandiant Corporation, traced the hacking there and concluded it is one of the most prolific cyber espionage groups in terms of the sheer quantity of information stolen. Mandiant said the Chinese stole reams of information from U.S. military contractors, energy companies, the aerospace and telecommunications industries, and others. In Beijing, a Chinese government spokesman called the report groundless, without addressing the specific findings.
China firmly opposes hacking, has implemented relevant laws and regulations, and adopted strict enforcement measures to prevent hacking activities. China is also a victim of internet hacking attacks. We have stressed many times that hacking attacks are transnational and anonymous. Determining their origins is extremely difficult. We don't know how the evidence in this so-called report can be tenable.
Still, the Mandiant findings are some of the most detailed accusations yet against China over hacking. More generally, a U.S. national intelligence estimate said this month that China is carrying out a major cyber espionage campaign against American targets. And Apple said today it was hacked by the same group that attacked Facebook last week. Both companies said no data was compromised, and both traced the attacks back to China. The report noted that there have been more than 140 different victims since 2006, and that the Chinese unit maintained access to those networks for nearly a year on average. For more on this, we turn to Richard Bejtlich. He's the Chief Security Officer for Mandiant, the firm that issued the report, and Christopher Johnson, a senior advisor who closely watches China at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. And we welcome you both to the program.
Thank you.
So let me start with you, Richard Bejtlich. What did this study uncover that wasn't known earlier?
The study found evidence that linked it to a Chinese military unit. Prior to this report, anything you'd see coming from a security company or even from the government would indicate Chinese hackers. And with that, you could think of patriotic hackers, people working in the underground. There was never a direct link. And we found through our research that we could tie this to not only a military unit, but a location, their headquarters, their building located near Shanghai.
And what did you find exactly is going on inside this building?
If you were to walk inside this building, you would likely see thousands of computers. You would see teams of individuals working on maintaining access to and stealing information from Western companies. They do this as their job. This is a directed activity. This is not for recreational purposes. And it's been going on for, at least with this one group, APT1, for the last 7 years.
And one of the terms you use in the report of one of the most prolific efforts or operations of its kind. I mean, how do you measure something like that?
That's right. We measure it in several ways. We track about 24 of these different APT groups from around the world, not just China.
APT?
Standing for Advanced Persistent Threat. It's a term that was coined by the Air Force in 2006. And these groups, they have different characteristics. Sometimes we measure them by the number of industries that they go after. Sometimes we measure by the amount of data we take them to see. In the case of APT1, which is the focus of today's report, they're in 20 different industries, 141 different companies, stealing terabytes of data. And that's why we consider
Terabyte being a lot of...
A lot of data, yes. That's why we consider them prolific.
And we want to say to our audience that we did attempt to talk talked to Chinese spokesman, government spokesman, to ask them to provide a guest to appear on the program, and we were not able to get an answer from them. We will continue to do that. But as I turn to you, Christopher Johnson, and we should say, as we just heard in the report, the Chinese are saying all this is groundless, nothing to it. But how does what Mandiant found in this report square with everything else you've seen?
Well, I think what's exciting about the report is what we just heard, which is this idea that for the first time we're now seeing the critical role of the Chinese military in this process. And also, I think it's going to be increasingly difficult, given the study's very firm methodology, for the Chinese to continue to initial these denials that says the report, such information is groundless and that there's no evidence. Quite clearly, there's substantial evidence of this activity.
And what is it? I mean, what's the hard evidence as you see it?
Well, the way I see it, what's unique about the report is, again, tracking this activity to a very narrow set of actors, and just the number of opportunities in which these same actors were engaging in this kind of activity, and the abundant evidence of what they were able to take, through their cyber activities.
And what ties it to the military?
Well, quite clearly, it's this military designation, that we've seen, and all PLA units, the Chinese military units, have these designators, and so the fact that that is in the report is very compelling.
And it's interesting that there is this sort of name tag identity to what they're doing, isn't it?
Yeah, the Chinese military uses these 5-digit codes to refer to individual units, and they don't necessarily tie them directly to the, say, 3rd Department, 2nd Bureau of the PLA. So we were able to unearth documents doing open source research. All of this is unclassified, that showed, for example, a letter from China Telecom to set up a circuit, in other words, to get internet access into this new headquarters building when it was constructed in 2007. And it said, we need to put a circuit in for 61398. And by the way, if you don't know how important they are, they're the 3rd Department, 2nd Bureau of the PLA. So they outed themselves in this document. So by finding those sorts of ties, we were able to center exactly what's going on there.
And what is all this tell you about what they're looking for? What do they want in all of this searching?
Well, we know exactly what they're looking for. This particular unit, we've seen them take financial plans, product development, usernames, passwords, email. They're trying to find out what these companies have, what they can use in their own sorts of products. They're trying to use them in negotiations. It's very interesting, the sorts of information that they take.
So principally, Christopher Johnson, economic, financial driven rather than security or military.
Well, that's what's
in the classic sense.
Right, and that's what's so interesting about the report, is that you have the Chinese military conducting this economic espionage. I think there's always been a view that, national security things, probing defense networks, this sort of thing, that's what you would expect to an opposition enemy, military to be doing. But in this case, it's economic espionage, which is quite interesting.
And do we have a sense of how much damage has been done by this?
Well, I think the report highlights that significant damage has been done. As Richard pointed out, terabytes of data, have been removed.
And adding up to what? I mean, what does that cost the companies, the organizations that have been hacked into?
It's a difficult question to answer. When the military encountered the same problem, they had to stand up a separate unit just for the purposes of saying, this is the information that was stolen, what is the value? Do we have to change a defense contract? Do we have to re-engineer a plane? What are the things that we have to do? And that's the sort of thinking that we need to get the private sector engaged in.
Well, that's what I want to finally ask both of you about, and that is, what can be done about this? I mean, is it clear what can be done?
I don't think it's particularly clear, but certainly basic steps, such as increasing computer hygiene among employees of companies, for example, being more mindful of these phishing attacks. One thing that was really striking about the report was that in almost every instance, it started off as one of these spear phishing attack emails, it looked legitimate and was sent to a senior corporate executive in a lot of cases. In terms of what the Obama administration can do, I think that this gives them the opportunity and significant leverage with the Chinese to increase the amount of transparency in the debate on cyber, and especially to increase the dialogue with the People's Liberation Army on the subject.
Is it the sort of thing that a company or an individual can, say, sign up for some security software and prevent?
I wouldn't worry necessarily as an individual, but as a company, I would download the report. I would take it to my IT or security staff and say, what are we doing about the issues in this report? And then at the higher level, at the strategic level, I would say, What is my government doing about this? What is the position that we're going to take with the Chinese? The government now has a tool that they can use in discussions with our allies, with the Chinese government, that's not classified. It's unclassified, and they can discuss it in an open manner.
So just very quickly, are we talking about legislation, or are we talking about something that can be done by the executive branch?
Well, Mandiant supports the legislation that Chairman Rogers has put forth in the HPSI for intel sharing, and I think for anyone who has privacy concerns, take a look at the report. You will not see personally identifiable information in that report. This is the sort of thing that could be shared amongst companies and help protect us all.
All right. Well, gentlemen, raises